Welcome, my friend, to the Holy Human podcast. Here, we explore the full spectrum human experience through nuanced conversations devoted to those who live to bridge worlds. This is a space where the mind and the body, the masculine and the feminine, the holy and the human come together. My name is Felix Whitman. I'm your host, and I invite you to today's episode. This episode, I'm joined by Dana Doswell, and it's especially for women who resonate with the hyper-attuned nervous system archetype. Often highly intelligent, deeply sensitive, and identifying as neurodivergent, including traits commonly associated with ADHD and hypermobility, which further connects to the archetype. Dana explores the nuanced nature of the female nervous system, emphasizing the importance of de-shaming bodily experiences and the role of titrating pleasure in nervous system healing. We also discuss the connection between menstrual cycles and nervous system states, as well as the challenges of navigating modern life while holding both freedom and responsibility. Dana is a nervous system mentor and educator who helps women with low-level chronic dysregulation shift out of their survival state and embrace their primal and intuitive selves by supporting them through a healing journey of descending back into their body and resensitizing themselves to what presence feels like. She brings together the study of evolution, somatics, psychology, and an unquenchable desire to articulate how true nervous system health merges fields of study that have otherwise been seen as separate. Dana holds certifications in IFS, somatics, somatic parts work, applied polyvagal theory through movement, somatic attachment, trauma healing, and somatic resolution for the female nervous system. That's a short introduction into who Dana is. And so without further ado, let's jump right into the episode. Hey Dana, welcome to the Holy Human podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, such an honor to have you here, a female nervous system expert and practitioner. I'm really excited to dive into today's conversation with you.
Me too. I feel like it's coming at the perfect time with a lot of the work that I've been doing.
That's lovely. So, as a starting question, you're working with mostly women and you're sort of specialized around the female nervous system. So can you give us a basic overview, like what's special about the female nervous system? You know, where is the difference to the male nervous system? I know there's a lot of similarities as well, but there is also differences. Let's start there.
Yeah. So there's so many ways that we can talk about the differences. So I kind of want to break it down into a couple of distinct areas. So just number one, women are the medium through which life gets brought into the world. So automatically our physiology has to be different. And the purpose of our nervous system, therefore, is completely oriented towards our social relationships, our social standing, and our ability to source safety for ourselves when we're going into pregnancy, postpartum, and essentially like the most beautiful, but also the most vulnerable times of a woman's life. So whether you choose to have children or not as a woman, your biology, your physiology, your nervous system is still online in that way. Like from an evolutionary perspective, we are able to create life and bring life into the world. So what this means is, number one, even the physical structures of our nervous system are different. And there's unfortunately so much more research done, dissections done on the male nervous system. And there's a lot more research coming out now. But for example, in a woman's body, her vagus nerve innervates into her cervix. And her cervix is what is kind of like the bridge between her uterus and her vaginal canal. So, I mean, we could get into like the spiritual meaning of that as well and everything, but it really shows that there is, which makes total sense, a role of the autonomic nervous system in things like orgasm, in childbirth, where you're tapping into a primal knowing in the body that's not driven by the conscious mind, that is allowing for these biological processes to take place. So in men, I haven't like looked at the male nervous system in a while now, and I would assume that there is innervation into reproductive organs in men as well, but we also just simply have different reproductive organs. Like men don't have a uterus, they don't have ovaries. There's actually a really cool research that came out recently that shows sympathetic innervation into the ovaries in women, which is super cool. So yeah, number one is just overall the purposes of our nervous systems are different. And so aspects of the, people talking about the masculine role of like protect and provide is actually very real. I think that there's a lot of nuance to it as well. And, like the 1950s trad wife thing is actually not really the ideal biological organization for men and women. But a lot of the underlying, like, men are supposed to provide and protect, and women are supposed to be able to be with children and be more in these like social environments and not so much going out in this like 9 to 5 workday is totally true. So when we look at the male nervous system, there is a huge connection to like testosterone, for example. So like you want to live more of like a pro testosterone life as a man, and that's going to be really nourishing for your nervous system. Versus for women, a lot of what, would drive testosterone in men is going to drive too much dopamine in women, which there's really cool research coming out now showing that kind of too much of a dopamine driven lifestyle for women depletes oxytocin. And our master neuroregulator is oxytocin. So you actually had a great post. I loved, like, the first slide was so clear. It was like number one regulator for men was like aligned action, and for women it's connection. 100%. And of course, we both have a little bit of each in it. And so, women need to learn how to have healthy aggression, healthy action, and be able to tap into that. But they are replenished and resourced through like orgasm, hug, safety. Like just, I always imagine women like sinking down and into the pelvic bowl. And for men, it's really like, and I see this in the order of operations, working with men and women, they feel so good about themselves when they go out and they achieve something. And it's almost like that creates better conditions for them to connect with people. And they feel a lot more like, I want to connect now. So overall, this like different evolutionary purpose. And then second, and this is also where a lot of my work is coming into play, is our physical nervous system is wrapped or sheathed in connective tissue, fascia. And in women, generally speaking, we have more elastinous connective tissue, which makes sense because our body needs to be able to grow and expand to hold a human. And our pelvic bowl, which, is everything is like wrapped in fascia, needs to be able to be strong and fluid. So we need to be able to carry life. We need to be able to give birth. And then that, contraction after we give birth and we don't have a baby inside us anymore, our organs need to be able to kind of like, move back into place. Men don't have that. So they, generally speaking, have more collagenous connective tissue, which creates more structure. And so you see this, like asking a man to move his hips is like, it's kind of a funny joke because they struggle with it. And so they just on a physiological level are not as required to have this fluidity. What that does is as we start to kind of make these connections between fascia as this proprioceptive organ in the body that lets us know like where we are in space and how our organs are positioned next to each other, is in women, when you are, under-resourced or you are, really in survival, this can really perpetuate you much more towards people pleasing. So you kind of imagine if you're so fluid and you don't feel super boundaried in your body, and women also have this kind of biological predisposition to pleasing others to make sure that we have good relationships. So this kind of gets, exacerbated in our modern society. And then we have women that are like, too collapsed, too fluid. They don't actually have enough structure. So there's so many interesting ways that there are these differences, but really like you can't understate how different our bodies actually are, but that when we work together as men and women, I think we create such an epic like union, whether that's romantic or just societally. So I'll pause there because I could just kind of keep going, but those are some of the main differences I think help orient someone to, what's going to actually be supportive for you.
Thanks, Dana. You're on a roll. And I love, like, you have such a beautiful ability to express things in such a precise way. Like, it just lands. And when I listen to you explain this, I'm like, oh my God, this is so fascinating, right? Like, even the connective tissue and the differences. And I'm just like nodding, right? Because yeah, it's so true. Like, we men are usually more stiff. Obviously there's exceptions, but yeah. Invite us into the archetype that you're working with. That's something that is really interesting.
Yeah, so it's so awesome, the timing, because I literally finalized like the name yesterday. It's been kind of like floating around for me, and I was like trying different things. I was like, this doesn't quite land. So the archetype that I've created is called the hyper-attuned nervous system. And the hyper-attuned nervous system, just like anything, can be both a blessing and a curse. And the hyper-attuned nervous system in my archetype, and what I've observed, is this intersection for women who are typically highly intelligent. They are very sensitive. They often are neurodivergent, or, like identify with a lot of maybe more of like the ADHD, like neurodivergent qualities, and are on the spectrum of hypermobility. So as an example, like some things I've looked back at my life that I was like, oh my God, I dislocated my shoulder literally just swinging a golf club. And that shouldn't, quote unquote, shouldn't happen. Like, that is typically a sign that there's a lot of laxity in the joints. The connective tissue is very elastinous. Even, like the way that I stand now, like as I'm getting connected to fascia and posture and spinal alignment, it's like my body right now in so many ways is like made up of compensations, because I didn't properly develop like a core sense of stability and strength in my nervous system, because I've been so elastinous. And a lot of women that I work with have the same issue. And so within the hyper-attuned nervous system, we can kind of map this out on a spectrum of syndromal to non-syndromal. And syndromal is, and this is also somewhat pulled from somatic experiencing. They talk about like global high intensity activation and like this kind of thing. So this is my archetype of kind of what they talk about, but in a lot more detail related to women. And so on the syndromal side is we see a lot of these women have chronic issues: POTS, dysautonomia, cystic acne, chronic digestive disorders, which is a lot of what I've experienced through my life. And then you have the people that are still within this archetype, but maybe not as syndromal. And generally speaking, these are also the people, they tend to be a lot more creative, entrepreneurial. I think aspects of that also come out of survival. Like when I graduated university and I was actually supposed to be an accountant and a lawyer, which is so funny to think back to now. But I actually had a realization that I couldn't work in an office. And that was why I got into entrepreneurship at the beginning. Like it was so excruciating to me for so many reasons. And I couldn't understand how other people like were okay with it. And so like, it's just funny, like talking to other women I work with now, it's like same thing. They're like, I can get, 40 hours of work done in 3 hours, and I want that to be okay so I can go live my life after. And I'm like, yep, that tracks. But you talk to other people that are like, no, I love the predictability. I love knowing I go in at 9, I leave at 5. If I stay in this job, my life is like safe and taken care of. And I think there's a lot of, in the healing realm, there's a lot of demonization of that, of like, you're just stuck in the matrix. It's like, okay, well, some people actually really vibe with that and they enjoy it. And this is more just about being able to recognize like what is good for you. So with this archetype, the hyper-attuned nervous system, when I say it can be both a blessing and a curse, on the curse side is when we are under-resourced, we have not been taught or shown how to actually feel safe with our level of intensity and sensation and sensitivity that we have, because we're hyper-attuned to everything. Yeah. So it's like thinking about you, and you've had this your whole life. So you essentially learned to hyper-attune to threat, is why your existence can feel like, why do I feel wrong all the time? And so what is great is as you start to work with your nervous system, because you can hyper-attune to things, you can also become hyper-attuned to pleasure, to creativity, to expansion, to curiosity. But for a lot of us, it's like we've had a lifetime of being hyper attuned to threat. On top of that, not only do we experience this hyper attunement to external threat, but because your internal sensations are so intense and magnified and often have been coupled with chronic health issues, which is it's very different than other people that haven't had that, your nervous system can start to learn that, the internal sensation of even like I used to get cold sores all the time. I could feel a cold sore coming on, and I would immediately, I didn't know it at the time, but I'd have a stress response. I would be scared of like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, I don't want this on my face again. I feel so ugly. Like, what's wrong with me? And so you actually start to overcouple threat with interoception, or your ability to sense things internally in your body.
Yeah.
So now it's like, what feels safe? Pretty much nothing. And so even though you have a very sympathetically dominant nervous system, which is like, I want to go, I want to create things, I want to achieve things, and you feel the potential of everything around you, it doesn't actually feel safe to engage with it unless you go into extreme intensity mode, blast coffee on an empty stomach, get into that mode. So what ends up happening is you learn how to dissociate. This is like what people call maladaptive daydreaming, which is like these people also have very developed image channels, like are able to visualize really clearly, but this is being targeted towards like dissociation through daydreaming. Like for me, it was like reading fantasy book after fantasy book and just escaping into that. It is smoking weed because it would like numb out enough of the hypervigilance that I could actually like, oh my God, this is what it's like to feel like safe in my senses, like cool. And yeah, and so there's nuance and there's a spectrum of everything that I'm talking about, but this is really real, and not everybody experiences life in this way, and not everybody has a nervous system that has developed in this way.
Wow. Let's just pause for a second. There's so much that you said. Oh my God. I'm like, where can I learn about this? I'm a man, right? But
Yeah.
I'm still this is so fascinating to me. Like what you're saying, I love, like, I can tell you from your archetype as well, like you're very intelligent and you're bringing in all this knowledge. I saw that on your Instagram stories as well, as you were saying, like that the knowledge is such an important part as well, like the information and the learning and I see this with my own clients as well. It's like so paradoxical because we do somatic work, we work with the nervous system, but we start with the mind, actually, like with understanding how things work. And then we're like, oh, this is so fascinating. And then we can drop into the body and work from there. So, yeah, we could take this in so many different directions. But what really stands out to me is the being hyper aware, because I can relate to that. I know a lot of people who have this kind of wired nervous system, and there's like overactive interoception, let's call it that. Like everything is so loud internally, to call it that. How do you work with this? Let's get a bit more practical. Like first, let's flesh this out, make this a bit more tangible so people can actually like, how does it feel to be hyper aware, and then let's dive afterwards into how to work with it.
Yeah. So to touch a little bit more briefly on like, what does it feel like to be hyper aware? So maybe people can see themselves in this so like, let's just say, I'm going to use some of my own examples. So like I used to have really bad cystic acne and, constant like skin infections, cold sores, like all of this stuff. And anybody who's experienced this will what's the word I'm looking for? Resonate with, you can start to feel it coming on. It'll be like a tingling in your skin. There's like a sensation associated with it. Maybe you start to notice, like for me, when I would get sick with a cold, which I also got all the time, almost always I would get a cold sore. So as soon as I started to get sick, my body, my internal sensations would start to predict that I would get a cold sore. And then the tingling sensation of the cold sore on my lip, I would start to feel it. And all of this, the way I would experience it was like somebody literally like reaching up through my body and like grabbing my awareness and then like pushing my face right on, like, here's where your breakout's going to happen. Here's where your cold sore is. And you start to hyper obsess around it. You try not to touch it, but you're touching it. And you feel like everybody around you is looking at that part of your face or whatever it is. So there's this like predictive sensorial experience that you start to associate with being sick or having a cold sore or having a skin breakout, then the actual experience of it coming to fruition. And this is where you also start to get into the like, your nervous system houses your identity and how you see yourself, because now you start to see yourself as like the person with acne. You might feel like gross, ugly, blah, like whatever it is. And this is where you start to internalize a lot of shame about your body, and that your body doesn't act proper. Your body isn't healthy, that no matter what you do, your body is not like, you can't get it under control. And so this is like part one of the, experience of this. And then now, like, even working with, a lot of women that have like digestive issues, like being scared of like eating food that somebody cooked for you. You don't know how it's going to make you feel. So already you're in a hypervigilant mode, over paying attention to your stomach and stressing, and like everyone around you is like having a good time. And you're like, fuck, like what's wrong with me? Like, I just want to be able to do that, but like my body won't let me. And so there's this very like on edge, like shoulders up, braced kind of like hypervigilant sensorial like thrumming experience in your body that is always kind of trying to track, like, is my body about to go into like the symptom? Is my body about to, go like experience like pain in my stomach from this? Like, I don't know. So if that resonates with you, then there is a pretty intense magnification of the meaning of the sensations in your body. And I think that's really important. And this is like the women I work with, because your body has not felt safe for you. You really overdeveloped your mental channel and your meaning making channel, which is like also, for neurodivergent people, like you're probably really good at pattern recognition and you are really intelligent. You've been able to, maybe you didn't do well in school, but you were able to like achieve a lot of things in your life kind of like through sheer willpower and just like, I need to do this, so I'm going to figure out how to do it. But when that meaning making channel gets overdeveloped, it adds so much intensity coupled to our internal experience. So the meaning making of like, oh, my digestive system, I'm experiencing like pain in my stomach right now. Like, oh, that means I'm not doing enough. I'm not eating healthy enough, that my nervous system is super dysregulated, that I'm in survival, that I ate something wrong. And that's the actual internal experience, is like all of that is happening. And then externally, you're trying to like sit there and socialize and have a good time. So there's such a magnification of intensity. And so leading into like, how do we actually work with this? There's like two initial parts. And this is where the education, I think, is so important, because I think there's also, one of my mentors talks about limbic resonance when you're educating, which is like, even probably you can feel this right now as I'm speaking. Like I resonate and my nervous system is coherent with what I'm saying. I believe it. I live it. It's like transmuting in that way. And it's not clinical. It's not like, this is a penis and this is a vagina, and you learn that in like high school, whatever. And like, you can tell the teacher's super uncomfortable and nobody wants to be there. It's like, there's a resonance to what you're teaching. This is super important. I call it embodied education. So like, as I'm teaching or you're teaching, it's embodied. Like, this is like a transmission from my intellect and my nervous system at the same time.
It really
is. And so I think that's so important, because this is the foundation of de-shaming, which is so much of my work, which is always being able to come back to permission to have feelings about what your body is doing, and then to orient towards what is the intelligence in this, because your body is always doing something intelligent to help you survive. Always, always, always. And so this is where I start with people, like, before we get into, deeper, like, deeper somatic work. I'm like, first of all, how do you feel about having like this digestive pain? And it's like, no one's ever asked them that before. They just go like, how can we fix it? And like, that actually just perpetuates that there's something shameful and wrong, and we can't get your body under control, when it's like, the more you pressurize and try and control this specific type of nervous system, the worse it's going to go. Like, truly, the body will just fight back. So we start with like, how do you feel about this? Most people are like, I fucking hate it. I literally hate my body. I resent my body. I wish it wasn't like this. I wish I could love myself more. I hate that I experienced this. And that's not love and light. People will be like, no, like we always love ourselves. It's like, no, that's actually not always true. And when you've grown up with chronic health issues or like a constant sense of dread in your body, which is very characteristic of like constant hypervigilance, why would you love being in your body? Why would you love your body? Why would you think that your body is like helping you or trying to heal? So I've actually found this to be, for me at least, when I first acknowledged that I was like, I hated my body. I hated being in my body. I hated the experience of being in my body. It felt really awful. That was resonant because I was no longer trying to pretend that I loved myself or that I, saw the beauty in my body. I was just like, nope, most of the time it's really painful and it feels scary. And my body actually started to feel safer when I acknowledged that because that was the reality of what I was experiencing. From there, that is what created space, or in the nervous system world, capacity in order to engage with my body in a new way. And that new way is, where is the intelligence in this? And this is where I've been able to put all these pieces together of the education of like, the elastinous connective tissue, neurodivergence, hypermobility, growing up in a world where we're completely evolutionary mismatch for the environment we're supposed to be in. A lot of people, they didn't realize, and I didn't realize, have extreme sensitivity to artificial light that has been a constant pressure on their nervous system their whole life. So things like this, where like you were seeing that your body was responding incorrectly, when I'm like, I had a panic attack in grade 11 from sitting in my biology class in a basement under extremely harsh artificial light. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. Nobody did. And they just were like, you need to just behave better. But I was like, I look at it now and I'm like, it makes so much sense. So that's, number one is like the de-shaming. It is like, you're allowed to feel however you feel about your body, including if it's like not love and light and it's like gross and shame and all of that stuff. That leads you into then being able to see the intelligence and how your body responded, which is you quite literally are rejecting, in many ways, the modern way of living. You're also probably, depending on the family you came from, ate like shit, drank tap water that had a bunch of chemicals in it, lived under artificial light, doused your body in perfume and shitty creams and things that just added a whole level of chemical stress to your nervous system. You then probably had issues detoxing, like your liver wasn't, working properly, was totally overburdened, which adds more stress to the nervous system, more of an internal threat experience. So your body actually makes total sense. And there's so much intelligence, and your body is actually speaking to you through these symptoms saying like, we're not vibing with this. Like we can't actually live in this way and be in homeostasis. And so when we start to see the body in this way, we start to depersonalize and de-shame and say like, oh, my body actually makes total sense. And like, I need to not use harsh artificial light. Oh my God, that actually feels a little bit better. I have more nervous system capacity. And so it allows us to see the intelligence in all of your, chronic health issues. And that is like foundation number one. We need people to de-shame. We need people to be able to see the intelligence and what's happening. Otherwise, they will constantly be operating from this place of like, there is something inherently wrong with me that I'm trying to fix. And that is just, you're never going to actually be able to heal or experience resolution with that. So I have the next phase I want to talk about, but I wanted to pause there and see if there's anything you wanted to comment on.
Yeah. Oh my God. Just want to take another pause. Yeah. Just let this sink in for everyone listening as well. There's so much. Oh my God. I just want to climb on a rooftop and be like, this is important. Everybody listen. I just get really hyped up by listening to you. Okay, so the de-shaming, that is so important. And I think this is one of the core things that I love about somatics so much, like in my work as well. It's like that permission slip. It's like, once you understand how the nervous system works, there's this, like, you can step away. Like before, you would be submerged in this experience. And it's like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I, get rid of those symptoms, for example? But then you understand how the nervous system works without having to work with it in the first place. You just understand it. And it's almost like you can take a step back and you're like, oh, my body's actually working for me. And you brought such a beautiful example of like, just, acknowledging, hey, I actually don't like to be in my body right? Like for me, this was a huge thing. My whole entire life, one of the core quotes that I resonate with is like, in this world, but not of it. Like I don't feel like, I never felt like I belonged to this world. Like I just couldn't understand how people can relate to anything in this world, right? And just acknowledging this and being like, hey, it's okay that you feel this way, and not being like, oh, I just need to love myself, or I need to be okay. And there's so much, like in the wellness industry, in the spiritual industry, where people, they don't really acknowledge like what's inside, like how we actually feel, but they just put something on top of it and try to mold you into a certain nervous system state, which works. Like you can mold yourself, like you can shape your nervous system and put yourself into a certain state, but it's not sustainable and soulful transformation, right? It's just another symptomatic approach, basically. And so I just wanted to highlight that again. Like if you're listening right now, just giving yourself permission, like just tuning in. And that's one of the things that I focus on as well, is can you be honest with yourself? Like every single session I do with people, I tune in, and it's a practice that I do. It's called 3-Sync practice from Thomas Hübel. And it's just about attuning to what is, right? It's not about attaining a perfect state or like deep breathing and calming down or anything. It's just like, oh, I feel agitated. Oh, I feel resistance towards what you're saying. Oh, just feeling how you're feeling. And that, it's so healing. Yeah. It's like the first step. Yeah. Just wanted to, I felt like highlighting this, and now I want to, give the mic back to you, and you can rip again. Yeah.
I love even just like your language of it. And one of the things that I think is really interesting too is naturally, like, because you're a man, you're going to have a different presence for when you're attuning to people than I would. And this is a little bit of a side tangent, but something that I've experienced getting into more of like the wellness communities and then somatic healing is, I mean, there's so much I could talk about here, but at first I got really pulled into like man hating world, where it was like everything is like men's fault, fuck the patriarchy, like women are just victims, like all this stuff. And I like dabbled in that for 2 seconds and just felt really like, this feels really icky and gross. And like, I want to have a husband. I want to have kids. I know good men in my life. Like this feels like a trauma, like a mass trauma response from women to go so collectively into man hating. The like, seeing women online being like, I'm literally getting my uterus removed so that a man can't get me pregnant. I'm like, that is literally fucked up and psychotic. And like, you are not okay. That is not a healthy response to like what's going on in the world. And I found a lot of comfort for a long time in only working with female practitioners, like whether it was somatic stuff, body work. I had some, weird, creepy experiences like working with men. And there's like the total shadow side of that in the wellness community as well. And the timing of this is also really great of like, I've, been really getting into my own relationship with the masculine, both in myself and externally. And I think this is such an important part of nervous system regulation, because if you are a woman and you're walking out into the world with this idea that every single man is going to try and attack you or hurt you, you're never going to freaking feel safe. And like, also, like I live in Canada. I'm, the women I work with are living in like the US, Canada, Australia, parts of, like Europe and stuff like that. So like for most of us, we're really safe. And like the reason I'm bringing this up is because I've kind of come to this point now of like starting to work with more male practitioners in certain ways. And even just, like sitting across from you on this podcast and like seeing a man who is able to attune, who, does that for a living, and who is just naturally going to bring more of a masculine essence to this, I think is so important. Because also for this archetype of women that I work with, like there's this spiritual somatic experience that a lot of us have, is this like unsatiable yearning to be contained, because we feel so just like like a bomb going off all the time of just like, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. Oh my God. Okay. I want to do this. I'm like just all of it. And I love being able to hold that for women. And there's something so unique and beautiful about being contained by the presence of a man. And we're supposed to have that. Like, if you want to look from like a, biological evolutionary perspective, like, we're not supposed to live in women only communities or men only communities. Like, we're supposed to be able to weave in with each other. And I think that men bring, especially with their collagenous connective tissue and their nervous systems that are linear and on 24-hour cycles, and have a higher HRV at baseline, which means that you're able to go up and down the nervous system spectrum typically a lot more easily than women do. That is supposed to be a resource for us. And we're supposed to be resources for men of engaging in more of the, like, mystical, cyclical, moon, lunar nature of things that they don't have as much access to at like an innate level. So yeah, this is like a little bit of a side tangent, but as you were speaking, that kind of came through to me of like, of course, it's a nuanced process to go through it, but one of the things that the hyper-attuned nervous system needs is stability. You need to eat meat. You need to like have like collagenous cuts of meat. You need to like strength train. You need to be able to feel that physical containment and stability that men like naturally have greater propensity for. So I was, not sure if you want to comment on anything around that, but that's been a cool part of my healing journey.
Wow. Yeah. Again, very resonant share. I so agree with from engaging with a lot of women, both like in personal relationships, friendships, also with my clients. Most of my clients are female. I see that, you have this, like, women are basically like this super tornado, like boom, boom, boom. There's so much going on in your world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I see the benefits of, at some point, there's spaces where women need to work with women. That's important to sort of develop a core sense of safety and stability,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's also spaces where women and men come together, and there's also spaces where men work with men, right? Like, all has their place and is very unique and has a different quality of, like, healing happening. So I agree in that sense. Like, men can give, especially like as a practitioner, me being a male practitioner, there is something unique happening. Like, if I hold space for women, there's just this sense of this presence where her whole like cyclical tornado like energy can just like, the sense of containment. That's huge. That's so important. Also for men, but as you were saying, like, men usually have that sense of containment. It's a bit more organic. It's just built in, basically.
Yes. Yeah. Literally to like the frame of your body, like your bone structure,
Yep.
I remember, I don't use it anymore. I used an Aura ring for a while, and it tracks your HRV. And I gave it to one of my guy friends one time for 2 days. He was like going to buy one, and he was just like curious. It was insane to just see the difference. Like, his HRV was like 160 for just 3 days straight. My HRV at its best was like 110 or something like that in my follicular and ovulatory phases, which makes sense. And your HRV drops when you go into luteal and when you're on your bleed. And just that, I remember being like, that is literally his reality. Like, he is so much more even. And that doesn't mean that men don't have their own emotional cycles. Like, they do. And there's a lot of depth to it. But it's like the foundation from which you experience your emotional cycles is like, it's so different. And I just was like, that is just a fact right in my face. And like, other women have shared same thing, if like their husband, that like they're living with a man, and it's like they'll compare their HRVs, and it's like men's are consistently higher every single day, and women's fluctuate every single phase of her cycle. She's more stress sensitive. So yeah, it's like that. But what I've also seen that is really beautiful is when men open to their natural ability to attune as well, because just as humans, like, we all have the ability to attune. They're so beautifully able to be responsive and of service to the cyclical nature of women, and they really like it, or at least healthy men I see, like, just being able to be like, I was at a retreat recently, and with like just really, really incredible men. And it was just little, like so many little things where it's like seeing men that are physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually healthy and have a practice in all of these areas of their life to like show up well and really honor women. It was like just proactively taking care of women the whole time I was around them. Like, you know, my suitcase, it was like without even me needing to ask, it was like just somebody showing up at my door. Hey, thought you might need help with this. And it was just like these little things. And I was just like, and then I feel flowy. Like, I'm just like, cool. I don't have to like ask and plan. And I get to just kind of like be flowy, which is an oxytocin state. And oxytocin creates this beautiful, like, plump, hydrated feeling to your body as a woman, and you literally get to be more playful and sensual, and it's like a felt sense in the body of just like nothing is as serious anymore. You're just kind of like, oh yeah, cool, my suitcase is down there, I don't have to worry about it. You go down, some guy's just like, hey, there's juice, do you want me to grab you a cup? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great, thank you. And you're just, there's just like this like nice reciprocal energy to it. And I think that's how we're supposed to live. And women, I do believe, I mean, I believe men and women can like nurture each other, of course, in like unique ways. And because women have this like different attunement sense than men do, like I have, you know, a couple of guy friends where it's just like, I'm a person in their life that is able to like really help call them into their potential because I can really see it. And I can see where maybe some of their like emotional or psychological things are like holding them back. And then they give me bro advice. Like, I'll be like, oh, I'm dating this guy and he said this. He's like, nope, literally next. And I'm like, no, but could he? And he's like, nope, next. And I'm like, okay. Versus talking to a girl, we would like beat the dead horse and just like talk about it for hours. And with guys, they're just like, I'm telling you right now, done. And so it's so, but I love that. Like, I love being able to have this like, you know, men counsel and like women counsel. It's great.
That is, I'm cracking up over here. That is so hilarious because it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Okay, just to keep things sort of flowing.
Yes.
I just want to say one thing, add to what you just shared. There's nothing more rewarding, or like there's nothing that feels better for me, at least as a man, than taking care of a woman. Like, you know, opening the door, taking her suitcase, just in general, almost like you tend to her, and that gives me so much energy, right? And yeah, I just wanted to say that out loud. There's a couple of things. Yeah. So do you still have your original thought, like you were on sort of
The phase.
on a roll? Yeah.
Yes,
but
the next phase.
I would love to go, if you wanted to, obviously, to dive into the HRV thing for a moment, because I took one of your courses, which I think it was called Resourced Woman or something.
The Resourced Women's Workshop. Yeah.
Exactly that one. And just briefly, I think maybe like 5 minutes or so, can you give us sort of a breakdown of the different cycles and how they're connected to the nervous system? I think that would be so helpful.
Yeah, love that. So for those listening, HRV is heart rate variability, which is the time in between heartbeats. And HRV measures your nervous system's resiliency or your ability to move up and down the nervous system spectrum without getting stuck in a stress response. So men are just have the higher HRV, the more resilience, the easier it is for you to move and not get stuck, essentially, which is why like men can seem so stable and like things don't phase them as much as it does with women, because literally like their HRV is like sitting at 150 and yours is at like 80 or something like that, which doesn't mean anything wrong with the women. It's just different. So HRV has been kind of one of the anchor ways of being able to track the nervous system through the different cycle phases, talking about the menstrual cycle in women. So there's kind of the way that I like to explain it. There's a book called Wild Power, which I can never remember for the life of me the authors, but they talk. Do you have it?
Give me a second. Yeah, I bought it. So it's this one. It's
Alexandra
Pope, and I'm sorry, it's Sanjay Ugo Wurtzler or something.
Great pronunciation. I don't think I could do that. Perfect. Yes.
It wasn't correct.
So we're gonna go with it. So yeah, in their book, they talk about the via positiva and the via negativa, which I think can be a good simplification for your via positiva is the part of your cycle where your HRV is increasing and going to its peak. This is your follicular phase and your ovulatory phase, which your follicular phase starts right when you finish bleeding. So follicular phase, also known as like your inner spring, this is your also your inner maiden. And so this is where I think it's so cool. Like we bring the spiritual, physiological, somatic archetypes into everything. So follicular phase is like your HRV is increasing. This is where you have almost this like fresh-faced, exuberant, almost like innocent, playful energy coming online. You know, if you are someone that lifts weights, which as women, please lift weights, you start to notice that maybe you feel like you have like more gas in the tank. This is where you might want to like go out like dancing more or like do more cardio. And you essentially are moving towards a peak of extroversion. So your HRV is increasing, and then you go into your ovulatory phase, which ovulation itself I think is like maximum happens over the course of like maybe an hour or something like that. But we typically have a few days leading up to ovulation where we really feel at our peak. So this is also where like your libido is highest. Like this is where you can get pregnant. So your body wants you to make a baby. So like I always like laugh with people. I'm like, I can tell when I'm going to ovulate. Like I'll be in the gym and I'm like a guy that I normally literally wouldn't find attractive. I'm just like, oh my God, I want to like bite your bicep right now. Like it's just like this totally like feral feminine feeling. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like, and then I look at where I am in my cycle. I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And so this is where your HRV is at its peak. And this is your like inner mother, inner summer. So it's like very much like peak energy state. And then you go into once you ovulate, and for some women, you feel the drop really intensely. Like I did this last cycle. You can almost have like a mini like 24-hour depression after you ovulate, and you go into your luteal phase, which is your via negativa. So now you start the descension. So follicular and ovulation is ascension or like up and out. And then the via negativa, your luteal phase and your bleed is descension down and in. In your luteal phase, your HRV starts to lower, it starts to drop, which increases sensitivity, decreases resilience. But a fun fact about the luteal phase is when we are well resourced, we have the highest capacity for neuroplasticity during the luteal phase. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that this is the phase where like we have things like PMDD, where people who have PCOS or endometriosis, this is like the worst phase. Like women will literally feel suicidal during this phase or like super fucked up. They want to change their whole lives. And then as soon as they get their bleed, they feel better. And so this phase is very sacred. I did a whole program on it earlier this year. We could like get into that a little bit. But your luteal phase has so many like important, significant meanings and opportunities in it. So it's like your luteal phase, your HRV is decreasing. It is your wild woman, like your inner wild woman. It is your inner autumn, fall, like starting to like go inwards. Then you move into your bleed or your menstrual phase. This is like your inner crone, inner winter, typically lowest HRV, especially like day 1 and 2. And then the cycle repeats itself again. And the last thing, like main concept that I want people to understand about the nervous system and the cyclical nature is there's cycle syncing, which is like, you know, adjusting your workout, your food, your like social activity based on where you are in your cycle, which is beautiful and supportive. Somatic like embodiment of your cycle is looking at your body's capacity for somatic resolution and embodiment in each phase. So it's different. And there are rhythms to this. Like, for example, in so many ancestral cultures, well, we're all ancestral, but like when we look back at our ancestry, a lot of women reported grieving on day 1 and 2 of their bleed. And this is like an interesting theme. Like, as I started to attune to it, I was like, oh yeah, and this makes sense. Your body wasn't pregnant. You didn't fulfill this like biological drive to create a life in your body, and you bleed. And there's a real release, like a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual release that comes with grief, usually on day 1 or 2 of your bleed. And when you actually allow yourself to grow your capacity to stay present with the grief, you allow it to come through you allow yourself to go into like a mini hibernation, you're embodying your nervous system and your cyclical nature, which can also mean like eating stew and stuff like that at that time. But it's like the emotional somatic relationship with the emotional experience in that cycle phase is really what it means to embody your cycle. And then you'll start to have a lot more coherence. Like day 3, you get an estrogen uptick on your bleed. That's when your energy starts to come back again. You're kind of in the in between of your bleed and your follicular. And like, there's just so much different like texture when you can be present with all the subtle energies of it. And then we know when you go into follicular and ovulatory, for example, this is a great time to practice boundary work. It's a great time to practice going into anger and healthy aggression because you have a higher HRV, meaning you can go into more charge and activation without getting stuck there or overwhelmed and come back to homeostasis. When we do that, it helps to prepare us to have a much softer luteal phase, which can actually feel super feral. And you want to be angry, but your body gets super overwhelmed by being angry when you haven't been resourcing your nervous system. So everything like creates this weaving, like ongoing circular rhythm together when you're actually able to work with the nervous system in this way in each phase of your cycle.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just wanna, more people need to know about this. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah. Can you take us along the journey? So we had part 1 and now let's go to part 2.
Yeah. So kind of checking in on that, talking about how do you work with this hyper-attuned nervous system. So we had de-shaming, which is validating however you do feel about your body, then being able to orient towards what is the intelligence and what's happening in my system. And then phase 3 is actually first focusing on exteroception and proprioception to create safety, which is very different than what a lot of people do. So everyone's like, connect with your body, go super deep, like do these like really, like descend so deep into your body and like find the root of the wound, which absolutely like we want to do that. But with this hyper-attuned nervous system that often experiences internal sensations as threat, we need to first establish safety connecting outside of the body. So for those listening, exteroception is like what you can see, what you can feel, the colors that you can, label, the shapes of things that you're looking at. Proprioception is how your body organizes itself in space. It's like what allows you to walk through a doorway without like walking fully into the wall. Like you're, like right now I know I could reach my left arm out and I just visually, I sense that I'm not going to hit the wall. Proprioception is like also our balance. Like when you're standing up, your fascia is this proprioceptive organ that is like, and you can feel also when you're hypermobile that your body will start to tense in certain ways to brace so that you can stand and be held. So before we go deep into, interoception, which is how do you feel that? Where do you feel that? What emotion is coming up? How do you sense that internally? We first want to establish safety with this external environment and proprioception so that you have safety going into your body. And this is just something I think is so good, even for any practitioner to be able to practice, like no matter if you're working with like a highly sensitive nervous system or not, because so many people, like I go in their programs and they're like, okay, take a breath and like, drop into your body, drop into your pelvis. Like, what do you notice is going on there today for you? And it's not bad, but it's like, that's not really the most nervous system informed way of like working with people, and especially like a highly sensitive nervous system. So focusing on stability through exteroception, proprioception, and the best one, especially, I mean, for all of us, but co-regulation, being in groups with other people. And this is where I think it's also really cool. And like, I'm so excited to create my next program because like, also imagine just being with a group of people where the entire program is oriented towards this specific kind of nervous system. So you also have more of an innate sense of trust that I can like come out of the control seat a little bit and I can co-regulate with these people because I know they're not going to ask me to do something that isn't right for my nervous system type, and they're not going to push me too fast or too hard, and I get to still have like my individuality in this space. I think there's such a beauty to that that you feel. So co-regulation, exteroception, proprioception first, mixed with the embodied education. Then from there, once you have a little bit more stability established, then we start to go inwards. And even as we go inwards, we start at the top and we go down and in. We don't immediately, like, even though the pelvis is like the foundation of the female nervous system, I don't start with the pelvis. That literally comes after we connect with the mind, we connect with the heart, we connect with exteroception, and we create stability, because there's so much that we hold in our nervous systems in relationship with our pelvis, our uterus, our ovaries, our lower bellies, our glutes, our waist, our sacrum. Like, it is our center of like gravity in the female body. So we really have to like titrate our way into that.
Oh my God, so much. This is so, like, for me as a practitioner, this is just gold.
Love
There's
that.
so much in there. Yeah, I've been writing on a post actually about interoception and the importance of first actually connecting to your environment, and like you were saying, using proprioception. That is so important, because I'm working with a lot of spiritual people. I suppose you as well. Like people who are very self-aware, conscious, spiritual to some degree, and there is like this tendency that I notice in spiritual people where if you ask them how are you doing, they sort of close their eyes, they go inward, and they have this like overactive interoception. It's like boom, they tune in and they go really deep, but it actually destabilizes them to some degree.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
what I found is, especially in my own life, right? I've been that kind of person. That's why I can talk about this so openly, right? Just always like taking a deep breath, tuning in, and like feeling the deepest stuff, but that's not actually helping. Like what we need is, first and foremost, we just want to orient, right? We want to sort of get a sense of, okay, I'm safe here. There's no tiger coming to eat me right now.
Yes.
Then
Exactly.
we sort of want to start slowly connecting with the body, right? Like proprioception, like where's my body? I one of my favorite things is like connecting to gravity, just feeling the chair and like the support. Maybe find your spine in your chair, right? And then gradually, I love this. I didn't know that. Like I want to try this in my sessions as well, and in my personal practice. Like starting with the head and then moving downwards. That's an interesting concept. Yeah.
A really great one for that. So the way that I kind of would organize a practice, if I was to go like external, like exteroception first and then coming into the body, so like orienting, helping somebody find stability, and then using containment to help people find the edges of their body. So like one hand on the forehead, one hand on the back, and like playing around with different pressure. Or even something I also love to help people find their yes and their no: hover your hand over your forehead and hover your hand here. And then I would say, like, okay, if you were to move your hands closer, do you have a sense of if that's okay? And then they'll be like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, okay, do you have a sense? Is it close to touch? Is it pressure? Or is it just a bit closer? And they're like, a little bit closer. And then I'm like, okay, let me know if you start to sense that you want your hand right against your forehead. And then they might say, okay, I want it now. And I'm like, okay, what let you know that? And that really helps people not demonize the head and the mind, but get some containment, start to sense like the yes or the no. And once hands are actually physically on the body, you'll see typically a bit of a deeper breath. There'll be some relaxation in the posture. And then this is where I'll say, like, okay, feeling free to stay there, or start to play around if you want to press or touch on different parts of your head or your shoulders, or you want to move. And a lot of the time, especially when I work with women, I'll start to notice like a circular motion they want to make. And then it'll make its way down into their hips a little bit. And then they're like, oh my God, like this actually feels really good. And circles for women especially is like such a primal movement that we make in birth, orgasm, just like when you're like in your body. So yeah, that's like a really great titrated way to kind of come down and into the body.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
I love touching the head. I just did this in one of my latest sessions. It's like how often, like even for everyone listening right now, like how often do we actually touch our head? If you think back to your childhood, like being a baby, we have so much touch going on, like our parents holding our head and just, that's such a such a body memory, right? That we sort of forgot because there's like we're so undertouched. I think this might be
Yes.
just a brief topic that we could explore, and then we can see where we want to take
Yeah.
this. But yeah, we live in such an, let's call it, undertouched reality, right?
Yeah.
We're craving, like there's even men crave touch from other men that they back in the day had, right? Like back in the day, couple of years ago, in Germany at least, it was still mandatory that you go to the like military, and so you had that camaraderie, like that brotherhood going on, even if it was a bit fake and all that. But still, you had like men in places together, and like women in places together, and we had so much more touch going on. And then we had the internet developing, smartphones, and now we have AI developing, and we had Corona, like COVID, and so gradually we've been sort of disconnected from that, from just co-regulation. And a huge part of co-regulation is obviously touch. Like it's so not for everyone, but because you can also have trauma that disconnects you, that touch isn't safe. But for most people, touch is actually like really resourcing. And so yeah, let's dive into that for a moment.
I love that you brought this up. And one thing that I also just wanted to comment on, like the head touch thing, is it's a very parasympathetic, to use like nervous system terms, like massaging the head is a very parasympathetic, like inducing activity.
Right.
So something I do, like I had an osteopathic session yesterday, and I actually asked her, I was like, could you just start with actually just holding my head and like massaging my head for a second? Because I drop so easily into my body when I start with that. And something, I just want to put this out there, if you are like a parent, a mom listening to this, something that I think is like so amazing, and I have like on and off done this with my friends, is having hair oiling nights, where it's like a beautiful like body ritual, where like I would do this with my friends. I'll do this when I have daughters in the future, is head massage and oiling each other's hair. And it's like such an incredible like beauty ritual. Like women have done that. I also, like, men love it too. Like, done that like with some of my guy friends, or like my partners, like with their boyfriends and stuff. And yeah, so you're like massaging each other's head, you're getting this like touch, it's a ritual, you're oiling each other's hair, it like improves like the health of your hair, it stimulates your skin, like just like all that stuff. So just as like that's something I definitely plan to do when I have a family in the future, is like having these like body rituals that incorporate, like, they're all quote unquote nervous system informed, but they're also just things that our ancestors like did. Every culture had its own version of hair oiling or like ritual. Like my ancestors did a lot of braids, like, and stuff like that. And then, like even like India is like super popular for like hair oiling, and they literally like smack the scalp to stimulate hair growth. Like, so just a really cool like side note to that. And then the touch part. So men and women both, like, we need oxytocin, and women at like an additional level. And touch is the number one sense to like elicit oxytocin. Yeah. So this is like, truly, like being at this retreat the other week, I was like, I every day got like at least 15 hugs. I was like almost always in physical contact with someone. Like I'm sitting there having a conversation, our legs would be touching, or like someone's sharing something emotional with me, I would reach out and grab their hand. One of the girls like braided my hair the first night, and I was like, I literally felt the oxytocin like buffer come online. Like it was just like everything felt easier. Like everything felt easier. And I was just like, wow, like this is, we're, so we're so meant to be in constant physical contact with people. And so for women, a big thing that I work with is, for women that like don't have partners or whatever it is, like how do we actually start to help you like produce more oxytocin? And so a lot of that is like head massage, actually doing like light touch on your own body, things like I got like a sheepskin hot water bottle, and sheepskin has like a natural grounding effect to it. And it's like an EMF blocker. So like I will like sleep with that at night. Or like this is why like having an animal is like so co-regulating, because you get oxytocin. So, and of course, you know, self-touch, depending on your history, you'll have your own journey with it. And like I just want to say to anybody, like I really believe no matter what you've experienced, you can get to a point where at minimum your own touch feels completely safe for you. And that is like what we want to start with, is like being able to, you know, connect with your own touch, the feeling of your own hands on your body, using things like containment to even just help feel that there's like that presence. And really, like for women, like that oxytocin effect that you get from that, and men too. Like I remember like the last relationship that I was in, I would always like scratch right here, like on like the very back of his neck, like on his hairline. It was just like such a natural thing for me. If he was like driving us somewhere, and I just remember he always reminded me of a dog, and he would just like love it every single time I did it. And so I'm like, you know, just like these really natural movements and impulses that we have, it's like they're instinctual for a reason. And so like, you know, next time you're talking to somebody, if they tell you something emotional or whatever it is, don't hold yourself back from reaching out to like, you know, touch their hand or like touch their shoulder, or, you know, like ask if you can give them a hug. Like that's not weird. Like we've made it kind of weird, but it's really not weird. And it's actually a lot weirder to hold yourself back from doing that.
Oh, that's such a big one. Oh my God. I think, correct me if I'm mistaken, but like Canadian and like US culture is a bit different from the European culture, especially like I'm talking like Polish, German, you know, my ancestors. Like in Germany, obviously I'm generalizing and every family is different, but with my family, like touch isn't something that is like we didn't even hug each other that often sometimes. But you know, like with I remember back in the day with my first girlfriend, I actually needed to learn how to hug. Like I didn't
Yeah.
have that skill developed. And so yeah, this is so important. Like even things like grabbing someone's hands, right? Like, or if you're with a partner, just, you know, grabbing the hands and just holding them for a moment. There's so much, you know, if you're having a challenging conversation or something, just holding the hands, it's like, oof, there's so much happening in the body on a nervous system level that is so important. So
Yeah.
thank you for
It's
bringing
so
this up.
funny, the German thing, because I feel like Germans have this like reputation for being pretty cold. Like
It's true.
just across, like yeah, like there's a. I was just in Mexico, and there's a woman who does rolfing, which is like a cool like fascia based body
Yeah,
work, and
yeah,
she's German, lived in this area for quite a while, and like I remember like yeah, just meeting her, and like she's just so German in so many ways, and I like hugged her goodbye the first time, and she was like so shocked. It was like funny, but then she like hugged me back, and it was like a really nice moment. But like just the way she like talks and stuff, and honestly, like I think in many ways, you know, US culture and Canadian culture, like our existing societal structures are based on Europeans that came here. So there is a lot of commonality with that. And like even the English language is, I'm pretty sure, a combination of Germanic and like Latin like influence like on both of them. So we have a practicality, a specificity to the way that we talk and the way that we engage with things that can be a little bit cold. In the US, you know, similar, and obviously being countries that are very like business focused, like that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I think it's like, you know, somewhere along the line of like human development, there, and don't get me wrong, I think there's so many amazing parts of like what Canada is. Like it's, you know, in many ways been a super safe country, and there's so like there's a reason why a lot of people want to immigrate here. And same thing with the US, is because like somebody who starts with nothing and somebody starts with a lot both have the ability to create wealth and a better life for themselves, and that often doesn't exist in a lot of other countries. And one of the things that we lose often at the expense of that is the community aspect, the like just co-regulation baked into the environment. And it's like, I at least I'm at this point where I'm like, This is a little bit of a side topic. I don't think capitalism is like inherently bad. I don't think that we actually are existing in like a true capitalist society. I think that being able to compete and collaborate is beautiful and a part of the natural human experience. And I believe in a free market. And how do we do it where we bake in community and co-regulation at the same time so we don't have to give one up for the other? Just like a little bit of a side tangent, but something that I think a lot of people care about, and like it, impacts your nervous system in terms of just like, how am I wanting to live? Like, is it okay that I'm an entrepreneur and I actually like making money and I like being creative and I like business? Because there's a lot of like in the healing world now, capitalism is evil. We need to create, create all new structures and fuck everything that
Mhm.
exists. And I'm like, that to me just sounds super overwhelming and dysregulating, and I think stops people from actually being more well resourced in the existing society that we have. And I'm like, what would happen if more people that were living with their nervous systems had more resources?
Yeah.
That is just naturally, and this is the natural part of human evolution, that is going to create something, like even without us even super intentionally creating, like whether it's like a new government or whatever it is, it's like more people with more resources with different values is naturally going to create something. And like that's what I really personally am like orienting towards and encourage other people to do, because now you don't get overwhelmed by the idea of like, I want to simultaneously like do well under capitalism, but also I'm being told it's completely evil and I shouldn't want to do well in it. And so like, what does that do to your nervous system? Like we need to depressurize that a little bit.
Wow, such an interesting side track, right? Yeah, I agree from my own perspective, or from my own experience. The more I actually left that kind of idea of, like the spiritual idea and like the matrix is bad and all that, and the system is evil and we need to create something entirely new, and just let that go, like let that sit there. And I'm not saying that the system is all nice and stuff
It's
and neat,
not.
but just me, especially as a man, leaning more into the system and just into the matrix and actually familiarizing myself with how it works and how I can actually get ahead, whilst also resourcing myself, like you were saying, that created the most regulation in my system. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I can actually trust my ability to survive in this crooked system, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you are in a much better position to be of real support to anybody around you in your immediate
Exactly.
community. And like, this is the thing that I started to notice was like, everyone talks, not everyone, but a lot of people will talk about like, okay, we need to be more well resourced and more regulated. But first we have to completely take down all of these systems that are in place. I'm like, there's a reason why people that are deeply in survival mode don't really give a fuck about that, because they can't. They're in survival mode. So you telling them that when they're so depleted, the first thing they need to do is overtake an entire system, you're literally not helping them. You're adding so much more overwhelm to their system. And then they just are staying in this perpetuation of, because I am this, because I'm that, I can never get ahead. This system is against me. Everything is against me. I now can't help my community, can't help. And it just creates so much. I mean, I could like really go off on how this weaves into politics and stuff, but it completely disempowers people. And then it creates this idea of like, it's so easy to pick out a label, like, because I'm neurodivergent, I can't compete in this world, and therefore I'm going to be poor, and therefore I need somebody else to give me money that they've earned from working hard. I don't believe that. I'm like, okay, you have ADHD. That actually, again, blessing and a curse. Focus on how to cope with the curse. Do the blessing part, because you have way more creativity than somebody who is okay working a 9-to-5 accounting job. And right now, the world needs both of you. So focus on that. Now you're making more money. You feel more emotionally stable. You're living in a better environment. Now you start being able to support your family and your friends. And maybe you start creating things that help bring awareness to other people with ADHD of how you can start to create a career in this existing system that allows you to be more well resourced. Now we have purchasing power in the hands of people who really give a fuck about where they put their money, are intentional behind it, and who are trying to upskill and empower people without it being at the expense of their physiology, which to me is like, would be the greatest form of capitalism, is like us having like that that value system or the ability to create and compete and innovate with the core value of we're doing this to support the earth and our bodies, not at the expense of the earth and our bodies. And I really believe that instead of just trying to tear everything down, it's kind of just like slowly disengaging from it, or like only engaging with the quote unquote matrix in ways that allow you to become more well resourced. And then like you actually have so much freedom at that point to be like, what do I want to do now? But freedom is a lot of responsibility, and it takes a lot of nervous system capacity to stay present in your body with that level of freedom. And I actually think that's what a lot of people are scared of, because it's really scary for me, like totally. And I love it, but it's scary being like, I'm 31, I live alone, I have my own business, I'm financially secure, I'm, you know, like well-resourced in many ways. I love and support my friends and my family, and like nobody in my bloodline that is, you know, that I've known or really anybody around me is like living in the same way. So it's like amazing freedom, lots of benefits, and a lot of responsibility of how do I want to like wield this now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Oh my God. Yeah. I call this life-giving success, right?
Yes.
Like in harmony with the earth, like you were saying, and the body, but still, you know, doing the kind of business stuff. Wow. Yeah. So is there anything like in regards to what you were sharing before with your archetype, you know, the overly aware neurodivergent archetype, is there anything that you'd like to add to that to sort of complete the conversation? I feel like we're slowly coming to an end, but
yeah, I feel like one of the really big markers of this nervous system archetype is that pleasure and safety actually feel like a threat to your nervous system. And because it's asking you to slow down, and pleasure can feel really frivolous when your entire identity is really wrapped up in like being impressive and competent and intelligent and getting things done. And so this is, you know, in also the healing world, there's so much good intention about, you know, helping women connect to pleasure and sensuality and like being in their body. And so much of it will be too overwhelming for your nervous system at first. Trying to spend an entire 60-minute session connecting with pleasure is really likely to throw you into a stress response, because that literally is like a threat to your system. So I wanted to add this because I think it's like being able to feel safe with pleasure is literally an incredibly important part of, healing the female nervous system. But you have to go so slow with going slow, like literally. And I've seen this in myself with clients, like 30 seconds. And then their body is like, nope, that is like, I can't stay there. So, okay, it's 30 seconds. So the like practical advice I would give around that is don't try, at least at the beginning, to force pleasure and slowness to coexist. Your nervous system is fast. You're hyper aware. So try and see how you can bring fast and pleasure together at the same time while being present with it. That is going to be your pathway into slow pleasure. And this is actual titration applied in like the real world with like bio-individuality to the nervous system, you know, like in context. So like literally something like yesterday I was like running a million errands, and I was just getting into that flow state where I was like fucking checking things off, and I was feeling really good. And I had this moment of like, oh, am I, you know, being too dopamine driven right now? I was like, wait, how does this feel in my body? And I was like, actually, I feel fast and present at the same time. Okay, cool. I went to get a coffee, and I just took an extra second to like, you know, I love like a bone dry cappuccino. And I was like, I took like my first sip, and I was like, fuck, this is like so good. And instead of trying to be like, okay, I'm going to really sit here, I'm going to take 10 sips like this, it was like one sip. Went in my car, drove to the spring to pick up my like spring water that I get each week. And that was within my real window of tolerance to connect with pleasure and stay fast while being connected to pleasure. And then at night, I was actually way more able to downregulate and go to bed more easily because I hadn't pushed myself out of my threshold during the day. So to give like a real life example of like what that looks like.
Oh my God, that is another rooftop moment where I want to climb on the rooftop and be like some speakers and just, broadcast what you just said, because this, like from my own experience as a practitioner and my own personal experience, this, for everyone listening, is the essence of somatic work, right? Like, just how can you titrate, like how can you slow down in very titrated, tiny ways like this? This is so beautiful. And this is actually how you rewire the nervous system. I'm so passionate about this. And I love that you brought this like real life example, because like just to really bring across this whole point, if you were to buy that cappuccino and you're on a roll and then you're like, I don't know, I had this like Eckhart Tolle programming from my dad in my childhood. So to me, spirituality and a conscious life is like, do you know Eckhart Tolle?
Yes.
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we are in the here and now, and
Yeah.
yeah, everything is now in this, like a turtle, right? And that's okay. Maybe
Yes.
some people have a nervous system like that, but for 99% of the people living and surviving in this crazy society, you don't have a nervous system like this, other than God gifting you enlightenment or whatever. But for most people, we grow up and we have to survive, and so we are most likely either sympathetically dominant or, well, parasympathetically dominant and shut down, but then you have trouble living. So most people are more like, just boom, 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 always on the go. And just having the ability, or like taking that time to one sip and just enjoying it for I don't know, like 5 seconds, that cappuccino, and then keeping the flow going is going to do so much more for your nervous system than actually, I don't know, slowing down, sitting in a coffee shop, but you're not actually feeling it because you're on a roll
Yes.
and you're like, oh no, I need to sit down because, I need to take care of my nervous system, right? I need
Yeah.
to be in the now moment. That's bullshit. It's not working at all. Like, it's going to stress you out and you're losing the momentum, and then you're stressing even more because you lost the momentum. Yeah. Anyway, I just
Literally exactly that.
really
Yeah.
wanted to bring across this point because this is so important. Like those tiny threshold moments. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, 100%. It is. It's like, because it's so funny you say that, because I've done that in the past where I was like, Sunday morning, I'll wake up, I go get a cappuccino, I don't bring my phone or my computer, and I'm like, I'm going to just go and sit and like enjoy the cappuccino. And then I get so stressed and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, I actually don't want to be doing this right now, but like I should, because this is teaching my nervous system how to feel pleasure. And I'm like literally aggressively trying to get my body to feel pleasure. And then I'm like, I'm not even enjoying this. So it's like, I think this is the other part too of living in the modern world, is like you can't go from super high stimulation to almost no stimulation and feel safe, like a drop like that. You do need to titrate your way into it. And like that's just, whether the ancestral living people like that or not, that's just like the reality of the nervous system. So
That's just how it is. Thank
yeah.
you for bringing this up. Yeah, I had my own experience back in the day when I went for like long walks, but I felt stressed. But I was like, no, I need to go every single day. I need to go for like an hour walking in the forest. But every time I did, my nervous system was like, I'm not getting anything done here. Like, I want this, but I'm not feeling it, right? And then you have this sort of like dissonance between like
Yeah.
your experience, your somatic experience, and what your mind is trying to force you to do because it thinks this is resourcing. Yeah.
It's so funny you say that, because I had this moment like a year ago. A friend of mine posted on her story about how she often doesn't find being in nature that regulating. And I was like, me either, but I've never really been able, I felt like shame around it. Like, oh, like, we are
Yeah.
nature, we're it, like whatever. And then I was like, yeah, that's because when you're in nature like that, it's full presence, like whether you want to or not. And if you don't yet have the capacity to stay that present, that parasympathetic for that long, it actually like it brings you way too close to yourself, anything you've been suppressing and all this stuff that you feel like you should be doing. So like it's kind of what you're saying. I'm like, I was trying to get myself to go for long walks without music or my phone every day, and I'm like, I started to have so much resistance to it. But if I go on a walk and I let myself listen to music, it's way easier for me to go. And like that's a perfect example of like, yeah, there's a bit more stimulation, but it actually keeps my nervous system in a certain threshold that feels safer for me. Because but then it's like so funny, the like wellness shame of like, okay, but like I should be feeling regulated by the sound of the birds, or like being able to just like be in my environment. And I'm like, that actually listening to music or even having one earbud in actually is what allows me to do that instead of just pure silence.
Thank you for bringing
Yeah.
another like real life example. I have another one just to make this really like flesh this out.
Please share.
In my neurosystemic training a couple of years ago, we had this guy and he shared, like we all talked about how we can't cut like vegetables very slowly. You know, like if you're spiritually programmed and you have that Eckhart Tolle program like I do, or I did, you're like, oh, very conscious cuts and you're present and you're deep belly breathing. And that stresses me so much. And I've always wondered. And now I'm like, well, I'm just going to go on a roll and I'm like,
Yeah.
and get stuff done. And I feel regulated while doing it.
Yes.
Well, I'm moving fast, but it's cool. Like
Yeah.
everyone listening, don't think that you need to like force yourself to slow down. It'll get better. I don't know to what degree we'll ever be able to really slow down because we're living in this fast-paced, crazy world with AI and everything. And maybe that's going to change entirely. I don't know, but just allow yourself to move fast, right?
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
so important.
I love that example. Yeah. I think there's so much. It's like this whole thing of like understanding that if there's a lot of pressure associated with the presence that you're trying to create, that you're kind of missing the point.
Exactly.
And like the last example I want to give, because I just like was laughing at myself, like the last few days I've woken up and like I always get 3 to 5 minutes of like natural light in my eyes in the morning.
Beautiful.
That's like my one, like I must do this every day. And then I watched Netflix while drinking a coffee. That was like the first thing I did. Like the last 3 mornings I invested in, I don't know if you've ever seen it, the daylight computers. It's like a circadian tablet. So it's like they don't have like the back flicker that we get from like normal computers. So that was something that I was like, I actually noticed a big difference if I like watch TV on the tablet. But yeah, I'm like, I literally have just been drinking coffee on an empty stomach, watching Netflix first thing for like an hour and a half the last 3 mornings. And I actually feel so good because I'm doing it in a way where I'm like, it's really cold outside in Canada. Right now I'm in like program creation mode. I don't have a ton of one-on-one clients. I did that on purpose. And it's winter. I'm like really embracing, going like truly just going slow. And it's so funny because in my mind, I'm like, no coffee on an empty stomach. Why are you on a screen first thing in the morning? And then I like actually had to take a step back and I was like, I actually can move really slowly. Like I'm humming while I'm like making my coffee and I didn't even do that on purpose. And then I was like literally giddy of excitement. I'm literally watching Love is Blind. It's like trash TV. And I'm just like sitting there like with my coffee. I have like my raw milk and my maple syrup. And I'm like watching this trash TV show. I have like my blanket around me and I feel so good. And I'm like, wow, it's so nice to not punish myself for enjoying this. And then I've noticed that then in the middle of the day where like the peak energy is, I like want to be getting up and like doing things. Also, that could also be, as a woman, like we don't have the same testosterone spike as you guys do in the morning. And so just like embracing that slowness in the morning has been so nice. And I notice a big difference of like, I don't feel as stimulated using this like circadian tablet. So that has just been like a really cool intersection of things that I've loved. Yeah.
Amazing. I love how we're breaking these spiritual wellness programs. Oh my God.
Yes.
So
Love
refreshing to hear you talk about this. Okay, Dana. We're slowly coming to a wrap up. Is there anything else that you feel called to share before we end this?
No, I feel complete with what we talked about.
I love the clarity. Okay.
No.
So where can people find you, Dana?
If you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, my username is the same. It's at Dana Doswell, DanaDozzYY. And yeah, that's primarily where I like post, share about my stuff. I am in the process of creating a program for the hyper-attuned nervous system. That'll be kind of coming out like early-ish next year in 2026. But I'll be like literally this week starting to kind of like share more, post about it, help you kind of, orient yourself, like to see if like that's kind of like the archetype you fall into and if my work would be supportive for you. So that's kind of what's going on in my world.
Yeah, beautiful. Any other offers or anything that you'd like to share?
You have a couple of other things. If you're somebody who has a bit of a basic understanding of the nervous system and you want to be able to float around to different like topics like attachment stuff or de-shaming, or like identity shifts, in 2023, I ran like 13 months in a row going into 1 month of 2024, a bunch of different mini programs with different experts on all these topics. And then now I just have it available. It's called the Soma Love Vault. It's like $37 a month, has like over 50 workshops in it. So I just find some people love being able to bounce between different topics like that and kind of like create your own learning path. So that's something that you could also dive into to be able to like, in your neurodivergent way, also just like not have a totally linear way of learning about the nervous system and be able to like dabble in different things. And I think I have also, my nervous system healing 101 course is like great for men or women, and just like gives you the basics. Like you would learn about like orienting and proprioception and interoception. And a lot of people have found like really amazing impacts from that course. So those are kind of two, go at your own pace. There's not a live like direct working with me option, but really good resources.
Amazing. Yeah, I love your work. Thank you so much for coming on here today, Dana.
Pleasure. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. This is the end of today's conversation with Dana Doswell. Thank you for being here, for tuning in, and for journeying with us. I sincerely hope this episode served you well, and I would greatly appreciate it if you left an honest review or subscribe to my YouTube channel. And with that, my friend, Felix is signing off, hopefully seeing you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day.